And with President-elect Trump getting ready to retake the White House, the questions of what happens next with the legal cases against him hangs in limbo. The DOJ is now moving to wind down some of the criminal cases as key supporters push for all of those cases to be dismissed. Let's dive deeper with former federal prosecutor Ronald Chapman. Ronald, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
So there are a few people that understand the prosecution system as well as you do. So I really appreciate you joining me. Talk to me about the DOJ winding down these federal criminal cases. What does that mean?
Well, I think everybody's heard Donald Trump say that he intends on firing Jack Smith, and that's not something that the Department of Justice wants to deal with. They're going to want a bit more of a graceful exit to this situation. And so they can go back to an Office of Legal Counsel memo. There was one from the 70s, but also one in the early 2000s that basically said we can't prosecute a sitting president. Donald Trump will soon take the office, which means Jack Smith is going to wind it down. The practicalities of winding it down, though, is going to be very interesting. Jack Smith can ask Judge Chapman to put the case on hold, which happened very recently, but then there will have to be some sort of dismissal or stay of the case. I expect that at some point we will see a motion to dismiss, but Jack Smith's taking time to figure that out right now, and hopefully we'll find out soon.
I want to add that a judge is approving special counsel Jack Smith's call to suspend any deadline related to that January 6th election interference case against our former president, now our president-elect. Do you see that case moving forward?
I really don't. None of the cases against Donald Trump are going to move forward. That includes Fulton County. I think the sentencing is also going to be postponed in New York. Every single case that Donald Trump is facing right now is going to be suspended. And the reason being is for a very good reason, I guess we could say. We don't want states interfering with the federal government's ability to do business. And we also don't want federal courts interfering with the executive office. This is really, it comes out of the separation of powers and is very important for our country.
What about those 500 January 6th participants that have been sentenced to prison so far? Could Trump pardon those convictions? He has said he would do it in the past.
And, you know, I worked recently on an episode for my podcast on January 6th and spoke to a lot of those defendants. And what I'm finding out is that a lot of them are expecting Trump to make good on a promise related to pardons. But here's the thing. We have some bad actors in there, and we have some people who maybe shouldn't have been prosecuted. And of course, the Supreme Court gave a lot of relief recently in the Fisher decision. What I would do if I was Donald Trump is set up a pardon commission with several, well-known legal minds in there to be able to decide case by case who should be granted a pardon and who perhaps maybe should have gone forward to prosecution. That would be very important.
Ronald, what about those civil cases? Unlike criminal charges, as you well know, there are no rules stopping civil suits from going forward against sitting presidents. How could Trump's return to the White House possibly impact those cases?
So we can actually go back to Paula Jones and Bill Clinton to look to see how a court would handle a civil lawsuit. And in that case, they actually allowed a civil lawsuit against Bill Clinton to go forward from Paula Jones, as long as it didn't interfere with Bill Clinton's ability to take the office of the presidency and perform the duties that he needed to perform. I think Nixon versus Fitzgerald was another case that we can look at where things were actually stayed. Bottom line is, if a civil case doesn't interfere, it can move forward. And these civil cases, I don't expect much interference. They're moving themselves through the appellate procedures right now, and I expect that they will probably move forward. I do expect, though, the New York Court of Appeals to overturn the civil lawsuit against Donald Trump related to the operation of his businesses.
There's one civil suit I want to talk about specifically. Trump has been ordered to pay writer E. Jean Carroll nearly $90 million. We covered that a lot here. He's appealing that, but could his reelection influence that appeal?
Well, certainly, I think that it will, but only because, like I said before, we have to make sure that there's no impact. That being said, I mean, when I look inside of that case as a lawyer, it was an absolute circus. I would be surprised if anybody in an appellate court actually took that case seriously and continued to require Donald Trump to pay these enormous amounts of money for that conduct. There are very serious concerns about how that trial played out.
Interesting. Okay. And like you said, we've never seen a sitting president charged with a federal crime. How would we resolve major questions like whether Trump could pardon himself when he takes office?
Well, this is the tough question. I think in this case, he won't have to because all of these cases will be effectively ended. And remember, you can't pardon yourself from a state conviction. So if the New York Court of Appeals doesn't overturn his state conviction, he's still going to have that felony. But when it comes to federal potential convictions and convictions, it is unanswered whether or not a president can pardon themselves. I think that that ability can be granted unless it's explicitly prevented from being used by a president on themselves. And so I would expect that if he had to do that, he would, although the optics of that are very bad. And I think he's going to try to find other ways around this issue other than a pardon from himself.
We will see. I know a lot of people have these very questions. Thanks for answering them, Ronald Chapman. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.